So I have my gay icon mug today. What happens is you put the hot coffee in and they illuminate, and then as the hot coffee cools, they go away and you can't see them anymore. Uh, love this mug, but my coffee isn't staying very hot today because it's very, 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 very cold. Hi, readers. It's Lori. Welcome back. Welcome if this is your first time. Welcome to another kind of wrap up of 2023, which is the books that I didn't like as much as the ones that I've already talked about loving. I'm not saying that I hated these books. Each of them had some merit to them, but they just weren't my favorites. And they're probably going to leave my thinking and my memory as soon as I finish this video because I actually, for a few of them, had to look them up to remember what it was that they actually were about. But let's kind of talk about them. And some of these are going to be unpopular opinions because some people really have enjoyed these books, but they just weren't quite for me, at least at that time. I am aware and mindful of the fact that sometimes our moods dictate how we love a book or don't love a book. The Many Daughters of a Fong Moy is an example. I started it last year. I didn't finish it. And then when I started it again toward the end of the year to really kind of, let's get this show on the road, diligence, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite books of the year. So it does sometimes really depend on what's happening in your life and what your mood is and all those things. No offense to authors of these books, no offense to those of you who love it or loved it. It just was, they just didn't really work for me. So let's get started. So the first one is Secluded Cabin Sleeps Six by Lisa Unger. I think this was a first Lisa Unger read for me. And I was really thinking it was going to hit the mark, and it didn't quite. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's a closed circle, isolated mystery, which I, of course, it's a trope that I adore. There were some distractions in this that I felt like, or plot points in this book that I felt like were really unnecessary and felt like they were thrown in. I don't know if to throw us off or if to just pad the content. I have no idea. There just wasn't a lot of closure or context to some of the little meanderings that happened. It was, though, a good exploration of nature versus nurture and what makes people the way that they are and who they are and what when your experiences lead you to this particular place in your life, it's a significant sort of honoring, I guess, or being aware of that. But this definitely was a strange read. I won't tell you more except that it follows six people who go to a secluded cabin for I think, a week or a weekend. I can't even honestly remember, but it will not keep me from reading another Lisa Unger, I don't think. But this one just wasn't something that I can say that I loved this last year. The Scribbling Solution by Ali Doucette, which I unhauled, um, is another one. I had high hopes for it. I had been in a room with a bunch of coaches who were talking about this scribbling solution that she had come up with that was really very cathartic and very beneficial. And essentially, it's just scribbling to support your mental health. There's nothing wrong with the solution. I think it was that this book could, and it's not a very thick book. I think it was about this thick. It's that it really didn't need a whole book devoted to it, and it was pretty redundant. I would say it could have been a couple of YouTube videos, and I think it actually is a couple of YouTube videos. It definitely helps people to understand how scribbling can help you to release emotions and pain and heal from trauma and different things. So, again, I'm not knocking the premise or the technique. I just don't know that the book was for me. And I gave it, I think, 2 stars in the end. It was hard for me to do that because I don't give very many books 2 stars, but I did it. A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. This was my second read by this author, and I loved the first one, What Moves the Dead, so much that I was so anticipating this release. I pre ordered it. I buddy read it with my friend Tammy from Believe in Yourself. And we both thought, what in the world just happened? And I can tell you exactly why, one of the reasons why this book wasn't for me. Her character broke the fourth wall. I don't mind breaking the fourth wall in a play, particularly, but in a book, it just doesn't work for me for some reason. So that was one reason why this did not appeal to me because, and if you don't know what that means, it's when the character stops telling the story and then starts talking to you, the reader, directly. And in this case, it was just little comments and quirky things and jokes, and it just didn't land with me well at all. This book could have been so great, and a lot of people love it, but so much of it was disjointed. Also, some plot points that never ended up really having any relation to the plot itself. It was a bit chaotic. Essentially, it's about a girl who goes to visit her mom who lives in a house that has now kind of gone awry and it may be haunted, and some weird things are happening around the house and in the neighborhood, and some of those were creepy, so that's why I ended up giving this 3 stars. Some of those scenarios that she brought forward in this novel were very, very creepy. I'm not giving up on this author by any stretch, but this book just did not end up landing on my favorites. And I haven't unhauled it yet, but I actually looked at it yesterday and thought, do I want to keep this? Do I want to unhaul this? I'm just not sure. Cursed Bread by Sophie McIntosh was one that I read, and I think was this a Booker Prize nominee? I think it was. And so I was in that moment in the beginning of the year into the Booker Prize nominees, and it could have been another prize, but there were a lot that overlapped. But I decided Cursed Bread sounded really good to me, and I had access to read it on, I think, Scribd or somewhere. So it wasn't a book that I purchased, nor would I have kept if I had. The premise of this book was presented as a true story that was fictionalized about a town in France that everyone was poisoned by the bread. It had a little bit of that, but that was not the basis of this book at all. The basis of this book was this relationship between the baker's wife and the ambassador and his wife, who come into this community because this ambassador's been newly assigned to France, and they strike up a friendship that then builds, and there is all of this sort of angst, and there's a lot of fugue moments, which of course could have definitely been that we were supposed to embrace the fact that perhaps these people were succumbing to this poisoning, but it just didn't. I don't know. There was just something about it that didn't connect for me, and it didn't really connect you to the poisoning as well as it could have, and just uh, it was just weird. It was just plain weird. I gave it 3 stars. The writing of it at times was beautiful. The ending of it was very odd. Uh, but I'm glad I read it. I think I would read another novel by Sophie McIntosh because she's a great writer, and I think it's a perspective that she writes about some kind of unique things. But yeah, this one was just weird, weird, weird. Okay, very unpopular opinion. Happy Place by Emily Henry. Oh my gosh, I did not like this one. I have read, I think, every book that Emily Henry has written, so it's not that I don't support this author. I've never really thought any of them were like, ooh, although some of them were more favorite of mine than others. But in this case, this one totally did not meet my expectations of it. So Harriet and Wynne are estranged from their relationship, and this group of friends, I think there are six of them, couples, have gone on this trip to get away. The house belongs to one of the girls' family members, and she brings her, I think they're engaged, she and her fiance. Then another couple of women go to this place, and then Wynn and Harriet go as well. I think her name is Harriet, just for a getaway. And Harriet and Wynn have not told them that they've broken up, although they've been estranged for a while, and they just didn't want to, I guess, ruin the friendships and the groups, which I guess I kind of get. And so they're pretending as though they're still together, which is a trope that we've all uh, heard before. And it's all of Emily Henry's novels are predictable. So I'm not suggesting that the fact that they ended up in this situation and what happens in the end of the book, I think we all predicted what would happen based on this trope. However, it was painful at times for me to read. I gave it a 2.5 star. This one is, second chance romance is the trope essentially, but enemies to lovers too, I guess, because there's a lot of angst at the beginning. Of course, they have to sleep in the same room, so they have to figure out how they're going to do that without, being in the same bed. They drink a lot, a lot. And so the book is generally, I guess, the happy place for all of them is when they're drunk and out drinking, which to me just didn't have a lot of meat to it. They just kept going everywhere because the woman who had brought them to this family home wanted this to just be this incredible week of fun and, doing all these different activities. And most of the time they were hungover and they were at each other's backs, so to speak, and or at each other's throats, so to speak. And then, just nobody seemed like they were having a good time. And I guess that was the point, is that this happy place was not a happy place anymore. But goodness sakes, I just almost couldn't finish it. So that one was a disappointment. I think Book Lovers is my favorite of Emily Henry's. I think I've mentioned that before, and I still think that that's true. But I'll still keep giving this a shot. But if the next one is anything like this one, then I'm probably done with Emily Henry. I know some of you are maybe clicking unsubscribe right now, and I'm sorry for that. But I just have to be honest, it just didn't work for me. So those are my least favorite reads in the year 2023. Most of my reads this last year were pretty good. They were consistently 3.5 to 4 stars, and again, most of them I really appreciated. And some of the 3.5 stars that I gave were basically because they were well formed and well written, just didn't quite hit the mark for me for some reason. And it happens. I mean, it does happen. So I didn't hate any of them. Some of them were just a miss. Let me know what you read in 2023 that didn't quite live up to your expectations or the hype, which is also a thing, right? Emily Henry and some of these other authors do get a lot of hype. And then when it doesn't quite meet the mark, it can be a little challenging. But I'd love to hear what you rated some of the lower ratings, and what happened to some of those, because it's always good for me, since you and I sometimes have very similar tastes, which is why we're together in this space. It helps me to understand whether I will like a book or not. I was actually this morning just reading a review that somebody wrote on a particular book that they just finished, and I thought, oh, I might like that. And then when I walked in to Goodreads and looked at the synopsis, I thought, no, not for me. I don't think so. And again, that's okay. There are a lot of people who will love and do love that book, and that's very, very cool. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you haven't already, I encourage you to click the subscribe button, like some of the videos so I know which ones you really appreciate. Let me know if you have suggestions for content you'd like to see on my channel. And as always, happy reading. Bye.